And when it's ready to.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson-Ford. Thank you very much to District 8 for hosting today's meeting. While I'm getting ready to project the presentation for today, I just want to introduce myself, Tammy Watkins, Government and External Affairs with Pepco. With me on the call, I see that we also have our Region VP, Mr. Will Ellis, our Battery Storage Project Manager, Mr. Bob Andrew-Kaitis, our technical expert, Mr. William Birch, as well as my colleagues, Alberto Zagata and Tony Ruffin. While I'm pulling up the presentation, Will, if you have any introductory comments that you would like to make.
Thanks, Tammy. I do want to just thank the council member and her illustrious staff for having I just want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to present. You know, I am also a District Great resident living in the Fort Washington community, so this definitely impacts my family as well. So wanting to make sure the community has as much information related to this battery storage project that is going to continue to bring resiliency and clean energy over to District 8. So hopefully we have enough information in the slide deck to answer any questions, but definitely this is not a one and done. This is definitely an ongoing conversations. We've been having these community meetings since February with a lot of community leaders, making sure that we are paying special attention to the concerns and opportunities as it relates to this project. Battery storage is a new and innovative solution that has been happening across the country, within the state of Maryland, and even with Prince George's County. So we want to ensure that we continue to bring these opportunities to all parts of the county. And the Maryland Public Service Commission, as Tammy get into, approve this project, but there are some great benefits to the Oxon Hill community as a whole. So happy to be here today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Tammy.
Thank you very much, Will, and thank you very much, Gina. Glad we were able to make those introductions and acknowledgements. I just want to go over the agenda today because I recognize that we have some people who are joining us who may have not had the benefit of participating in earlier CAG meetings. So there is a lot of information that we would like to share today just to make sure that everyone's up to speed with the most updated information with the project. So we'll do a really quick overview. We'll review the current status and go over the actual proposal. We'll take the opportunity, as we do with every meeting, to review public safety and site design. Today, we'll highlight some of the environmental considerations and rate concerns that we know came up at the TNI meeting. And we do want to take time to talk about the community benefit and highlight the ways that we will continue to leverage the CAG in this process. So just wanting to share a project overview, and we'll endeavor to take questions at the end of each slide, but just in the interest of time, because we want to make sure we present as much information as possible. Pardon me if I feel like I'm speeding through things, but please let's use the chat and we'll take time at the end of each slide for questions. So just in a real quick project overview, I thought a timeline might help to demonstrate to the public sort of the course of this project. So for those of you that are familiar, in 2014, Pepco had originally proposed a substation in the Oxon Hill area. Due to changes in the projected demand, that project did not move forward. So in that between time, by 2019, Maryland lawmakers then passed legislation to initiate the energy storage pilot program, which required investor-owned utilities like Pepco to construct battery storage projects. In April of 2020, as part of that program, Pepco sought approval for battery storage projects in both Prince George's and Montgomery County, and we received approval in November of 2020 for those projects. Beginning in January 2021, we initiated outreach to stakeholders, including the Office of the Council Member, who so graciously helped us coordinate events such as the CAG, as well as public safety officials. And then we began in earnest the CAG meetings, the Community Advisory Group meetings, in February. So let me take a pause there and ask if there are any questions about the overall project schedule. Okay, I'm going to go over the current status. This is a typical standing item in our CAG meetings, just so the public has awareness of the current status of the project. After I go over the points, I'll open it up to the Pepco team for any additional information, and then we can open it up for customer questions. So let's talk about the current status. The project is still at 30% design. For those of you who have participated in the CAG meetings, you're aware that we initiated the design process back in July. At the CAG meeting in both June and July, we briefly talked about the design phases and the process. Design for construction projects usually takes place in 30, 60, and 90% phases for work. Working with our third-party contractor, AF Mensa, with this project for the design and construction of the facility, we issue specifications to AF Mensa. AF Mensa then designs these facilities. Those designs are then submitted back to Pepco for review. And if review and specifications are accepted by Pepco, then they can move forward in the process. And we work with AF Mensa to modify any parts of the design or plan as we go through the process. So the next steps will be to approve that current 30% design and then proceed with the next phase at 60%. At the 60% design phase, we'll coordinate review with our public safety officials. At that point, there will be a sufficient body of information relative to considerations for public safety and environmental awareness that we'll talk about later in the presentation that we can begin to socialize with those stakeholders. And then ultimately, we're going to prepare plans for review by the Department of Permitting, Inspections, and Enforcement to secure the necessary construction permits for the battery storage. In October, we presented to the Maryland Public Service Commission an update on the status of the battery storage project, and I just want to highlight a couple of parts of that update. The update included a change in the operational date for the battery storage project. If you had participated in earlier CAG meetings, you would have learned that Pepco had intended to go to construction for the battery in February of 2022. But now we're pushing the operational date and ultimately the construction date out a little further in 2022. So our anticipated operational date is now September of 2022. As part of our update to the Maryland Public Service Commission, we also performed a review of cost associated with IT equipment that will be needed for the security of the battery storage system. And then also we highlighted for the commission the need for enhanced community outreach. Something that has been so significant in this process and what we were very pleased to share with the commission is, as a result of the information that's been shared at the CAG and by various community members, we've made modifications to the original intended design of the project, and we're very happy to incorporate those modifications. We also look forward to incorporating additional modifications as it relates to fencing, screening, and vegetation management, as well as looking for opportunities to support the community in other ways with the construction of this battery. And so we wanted to highlight for the commission our work in that area. Moving forward, we're going to continue to prepare our renderings for communication collateral for future public presentations. Those are the really nice drawings and schematics that will really give residents a sense of what the facility will look like. And then we are also committed to future CAG meetings for 2021 as well as 2022. But for the purposes of today's meeting, we do want to highlight the next two planned CAG meetings, which would be November 19th and December 17th. Let me stop there and I'll ask our project manager, Mr. Andrew Titus, or any other, because I can't see, unfortunately, who's on the call, but anyone, if there's anything else that we wanted to add here for the community benefit.
Hey, Tammy, no, I think you did a really good job of presenting all the information. I think you highlighted all the significant updates since our last CAG, so really great job there. The only piece that I was going to give a shout out for was about the renderings, but you touched on that one already. So yeah, we did reach out to an architectural firm that we've done work with in the past. We've got them on board, and then they're starting to develop the renderings this month. So we're hopeful that by the time we get to our next CAG in November, we'll have some nice renderings to present. That way it kind of puts a face to what we've been talking about so far, and everyone can really start getting a better understanding of what this is going to look like. And that doesn't necessarily mean that once we present something that this will be, this is what we're going to be going with. It's going to be part of a talking point. So if there's like feedback you get from that you would like to kind of incorporate different features, we're going to kind of rely on our architect's expertise to provide us with some suggestions. But again, we'll be looking for feedback from the community about some of the aesthetic features that we could possibly incorporate into the design.
Thanks, Bob. Gina, are there any questions in the chat, or do we need to open it up for any questions?
Not at
Before I go
this,
to the next one?
well, if anyone has a question, they can raise it now, but there's none in the chat at this point. Yeah, we're just
Thanks.
asking if everybody put their questions in the chat or raise your hand. I think chat is good because we're up at about 30 some odd people and we're expecting more people to come on. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, but we can certainly go back to any slide if we need to. So let's talk a little bit about the project proposal. This is just a rough image of the proposed battery storage facility at the Livingston Road substation site. You are looking at this image as if you were standing on Livingston Road facing the front of the substation. Pepco is designing a 1 megawatt battery energy storage system at the existing Livingston Road substation. The battery component does leverage lithium ion, which is the most commonly used type for grid scale batteries in the world. This battery storage facility will allow us to manage energy load at the substation, and it will allow us to defer the construction of a future proposed National Harbor substation. And that references a little bit of the timeline that I had mentioned earlier. But if we're talking about high-level overall project, this just gives you a sense of what we're proposing for the site. And I do want to talk a little bit about the technology. I won't narrate this slide, but just for public information, essentially the way a battery storage system works is it's collecting energy from the grid during times of low regular demand. Energy is then stored in the battery, and then energy is supplied back from the battery storage system onto the local distribution system. And that's how this battery is going to be leveraged at this site. So the connection of the battery storage facility is to the substation for that purpose.
Tammy, there was a question on the last slide. I know you said you were going to ask questions. And I don't mind, Mr. Jones, if you want to come off the mic and off the mute button and ask your question directly, that's great. Herb Jones.
Yes, I'm sorry. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
And thank you, Tammy, for the great presentation. Just two quick questions. Is there any commitment or opportunity for minority participation, one, and two, this being a pilot program, what is the concept for the shared cost recovery?
Sorry, I was just getting down your questions. Yeah, we will talk a little bit about this in rates, but just to give you an updated, there will be opportunities for minority participation with vendor selection. In fact, our vendor, our design and engineering firm, AF Mensa, is actually a minority firm that we have brought on board for the purpose of designing and engineering this facility. They have designed battery storage facilities in other locations in the Maryland footprint. So we're very happy to have to have brought them on as our vendor for this particular project. At this point, relative to the cost for the pilot, they are socialized as part of they are currently projected to be socialized as part of traditional rate recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about rates in the presentation.
Did you have something else, Mr. Jones?
No, if we're going to talk further about this in the conversation regarding rates, we can get into a little more because it's a pilot in terms of how the cost recovery is treated. It's my view it should be shared by both the resident, the residents. Okay, they are shared by the residents and your shareholders. Is that what you're telling me?
Specifically shareholders, I can't speak
to.
Well,
by the company.
Yeah. The rates are socialized across our system for the program.
Okay, let me ask you this. I don't mean to promote. So when you say socialized, talk to me a little more about that term, socialized.
Oh, sorry, I thought somebody else was speaking. Yes. So as you're familiar and sort of to highlight kind of a rates 101, Pepco makes investments in infrastructure for our system, those facilities, whether they be substation equipment, poles, transformers, or regular equipment, those expenditures are made. And then through the process of a publicly officiated rate case, we seek recovery for the investment in those assets. This battery will be treated the same way. So those costs, which are socialized amongst all of our ratepayers.
Okay, but what about the portion that the company pays on a pilot? Because, you know, usually in traditional rate making, that's how it works. I got that. But when you have a pilot program, because it's a pilot, it could work, it could not, could be some alteration. You could have the pilot going on for 5-10 years. Is there an end date to this pilot, or how long do you expect this pilot to be going on for?
The pilot is anticipated for a 15-year period.
So you're talking about 15 years of traditional rate recovery, which means additional cost to consumers' bills. Would that be accurate?
So we do not anticipate that customer bills will increase as a result of the construction of this battery facility. So if there are increases to customer bills, and we can certainly talk about that when we get to that part of the presentation, but it's not anticipated as part of this battery facility.
I will wait until we get to that part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gina, were there any other questions?
There was. Dolores Holmes, do you mind unmuting yourself and asking your question? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you. I saw on the previous slide, this one right here, it says that this allows Pepco to defer the construction of the proposed substation. So is this going to be in addition to the substation? Because kind of my gut feeling is it should be one or the other. Are we proposing a battery storage and proposing a National Harbor substation?
You bring up a really good question and an excellent point. So the battery storage facility is part of a pilot program. So at this point, while the battery storage will allow us to defer the cost of the National Harbor substation, we anticipate that through the learnings of this battery storage, there would be the opportunity for us to consider alternatives to the construction of a National Harbor substation. Now, does that definitively take off the table any future construction of a substation? Unfortunately, at this time, we can't commit to that. But what we're very excited about is the opportunity that the battery storage pilot gives us to reconsider that future.
Okay, so it's still a possibility. It could be both.
It could be, but we appreciate the opportunity to pilot a technology that would give everyone an alternative.
Okay.
And that leads us, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. And that leads us to a really good question that we do frequently, addressed as part of the CAG meetings. And that's, why was the Livingston Road substation chosen for this project? And I do want to highlight this because it speaks to a little bit of what Ms. Holmes was talking about as well. So first, the Livingston Road substation was selected for the battery storage pilot because this substation is expected to exceed its capacity by 1% in 2027 and 2% in 2028. So facing those capacity challenges, being able to leverage battery storage at this location represents really one of the best traditional uses of this technology. Placing the battery storage system at Livingston Substation reduces overall substation load to mitigate those concerns about exceeding capacity. And just to highlight, this substation currently serves around 9,000 customers in the Oxon Hill National Harbor area. This specific project does allow us to defer capital project construction of a future substation. And as I just mentioned, what this pilot will give us is the opportunity to consider how we would leverage battery storage in other projects in the future. So what you're looking at is the opportunity to continue leveraging batteries to manage substation load, again, as opposed to the construction of a larger substation. And this is also piloted learnings across the state, because as part of the order from the commission and the legislation, this is a project that is supported at the state level by investor-owned utilities. So if we're looking at the reasons for Livingston Substation, mitigating that critical need approaching in the 2027-2028 timeframe, being able to look at this as an option to consider alternatives for traditional substation construction. And just in light of the community that's served by this substation, this really represented the best use of this pilot as well as this technology. I do want to go to the next. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So you and I have spoke about this. So you're saying over 9,000, and former presentation just said 9,800 residents, about that number.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to address, okay. And that's over 9,000, but 9,800. We also talked about 1,700 are in the National Harbor area. 30% of this is serving them. And I'd ask you to provide a breakdown of all the other.
Not serving them, served by.
Served by, okay. But I asked you to provide a breakdown of the other communities in terms of percentage and the numbers. Is that in this presentation today?
So let's talk a little bit about that. Yes, we have presented that specified language in previous presentations, and I didn't have it for this presentation because what I did want to illustrate for the residents today was an image of the area that is served by the substation. This is just a more in-your-face image. We estimate at that substation it's up to 9,800 customers that are served by it. It's over 9,000 customers at most. And if you're looking at the area that is served by this substation, it's highlighted in this circle here. You're able to zoom in on other copies of the presentation. But in this area over here on this side, you have the Oxon Hill area, the National Harbor area on this side, and then here's Indian Head Highway. So it's important that I just want to make sure that we make that distinction. This substation serves everyone in this area. It doesn't just serve a particular constituency. So if you're,
I understand that, but we really do want to see the percentage, since we broke it down for the National Harbor, based on those numbers and percentage. We want to see it for all the communities in District 8 that it's serving. That would be great to get that. I hoped it was going to be in this presentation because we talked about it the other day, and you were going to send it to me yesterday, but I thought maybe you would have added it to the presentation for the constituents to see, because they've been asking us that.
We can certainly do that math.
Okay. And I hope we'll get it so we can share it out with the constituents. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So another frequently asked question that we get are, what are the other locations that were considered and why were they rejected? So if you're looking at the area that's served by the Livingston substation, also relative to the National Harbor substation, it's important to note the other locations that were considered, and they included the MGM parking lot, the Gaylord Hotel parking lot, and the South Point event area at National Harbor, as well as the Oxon Hill location, the site for what was intended to be the future National Harbor substation. So each of these areas presented several unique sets of challenges for siting and permitting, as well as future planning, and ultimately they were not considered optimal for this pilot project. I'll stop there and see if there are any additional questions.
I think it'd be great to know a little bit more about that in terms of the set of challenges.
Sure, I can briefly speak to it.
Okay.
So for the first three, the MGM parking lot, the Gaylord parking lot, and the South Point area, I can definitely see by show of hands, we all are familiar with these locations in the National Harbor area. So these locations present unique challenges for siting as well as permitting. Right now, if anybody's been to MGM or been to Gaylord or been to South Point, something that is abundantly clear is that all three of these sites are in use, whether they serve as parking lots for the amenities in National Harbor, or whether they serve as safety access routes in the South Point event area, or whether they are, they're all serving a current use and, disrupting that current use for the construction of a battery storage facility may not have presented the best site for this technology, as well as presented challenges for permitting. It's entirely possible, and we were not confident that DPI would allow us to construct the battery facility in these sites because of their current use. There are any number of zoning challenges as well as private property permissions that we would have to secure. And I don't know if anybody's had the benefit of being at MGM on a busy weekend, but parking is an issue in that area, and compelling those property owners to leverage parking for other uses would have presented some significant challenges for both National Harbor as well as Pepco. And then if you're looking at the Oxon Hill site location, which was the site for the future proposed National Harbor substation site, again, in terms of future planning, we certainly are not leveraging that site currently for the construction of a substation, but out of the pilot, if there is an opportunity to reconsider the development of that Oxon Hill location, we certainly wanted to retain the opportunity to do that. So rather than develop that land, it made the most sense to leave that land available for future planning. So let me know if there are any other questions.
Iverna McCray had her hand up, but it's down. Iverna, did you want to unmute and ask a question? Okay, that might have been an error, but just let us know. You can put it in the chat if you like, or come off mute.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to talk about public safety and site design. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but there are a couple things that I do want to highlight on here. Right now, there are over 29 states. Well, there are 29 states that include Maryland and the District of Columbia that have adopted renewable portfolio standards that recommend battery storage as critical to the integration of renewable energy on the national grid. So that presents us with the reality that this technology is certainly supported by state entities, and the interest in leveraging battery storage for the purpose of incorporating those renewables is critical to the future of the grid. And for that reason, also the issue of safety is of a major consideration to utility companies, including Pepco. Pepco is responsible for the delivery of safe and reliable electric service to our customers, as well as the protection of public assets. So where the construction of a battery storage facility sits in this relationship is a paramount concern for us, and how it's constructed and how it operates and the safety of that facility. We will design our facility to be safe and secure and reliable, incorporating safety measures at all phases of design and construction. We're leveraging independent third-party fire experts and putting in place fire protection and mitigation procedures for the entire operation of the site. And I should also note security procedures at the site. We continue to leverage just these kinds of interactions at the community level with the community advisory group, as well as monitor industry best practices, and we'll incorporate any of those new standards into procedures developed for this project. And we'll also work with local emergency management services, similar to what we've done for other substations and projects in the area relative to public safety. I do want to point out we have had communication with Prince George's County Fire and EMS preliminarily. They've participated on our CAG meetings. I don't have a line of sight as to whether or not they're participating today, but we've certainly engaged in those preliminary conversations, and we will continue to have those conversations throughout the construction of the site.
Okay, Tammy, we have 3 questions. I'm sorry, because I know so Iverna did put in, and Iverna, you're welcome to ask yourself. But she said, so it's better to locate the facility in or near a residential area?
We believe that it was better to locate the facility near an existing Pepco facility, which was the Livingston Road substation. The Livingston Road substation exists near a residential area. That is certainly correct. And because of the concerns with the capacity at that existing substation, and with the technology associated with the battery storage facility, co-locating the facility at an existing resource represented the best use of this pilot. So we are aware of certainly the residential area that's located is of paramount consideration, and we're aware of that, but the decision was made to locate it at an existing facility.
Okay, so, safety is, we continue to hear safety issues and concerns from our constituents. And Dolores has another question on that. Do you want to address that, Dolores?
Yes. I understand what you're saying about that there will be things in place to mitigate or control any fire or that type of issue. But my experience from living in this community over 30 years is those things come after an event. And so as a nurse, I always look at things from the physical health of the community. Have there been any studies to show battery storage close to residents' homes? For me, as a registered nurse, that's concerning. I'm thinking long-term, cancer causing problems with health, with our children, with the environment. And also, if this facility, God forbid, with the catch on fire, I mean, with the training currently that our firefighters have, I mean, I don't think they would be able to address it. And is this going to be ensured to be put in place before, this needs to be in place like now, a specific plan? And if it catches on fire, can it even be put out? That's my concern.
Do you want me to go ahead and answer that question, or do you want to give the opportunity for others to ask their questions?
I think you should answer that question, and we have two others to ask
Sure.
after that. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Everything you said is certainly very important to this discussion. And if you'll just allow me the opportunity to speak to as much as I can relative to your question. So the slide that I'm currently projecting right now is kind of an alphabet soup, but it serves some importance, because what I really want residents to know and understand is the proposed battery energy storage system. There are a number of requirements, best practices, regulations, and recommendations that must be incorporated into the design and construction of this facility. So relative to your concern that work be done now in the planning and design phase, we completely agree. And that is the process that we follow with our contractor. And I also want to point out that's the process that we're going to be compelled to follow with the Department of Permitting, Inspections, and Enforcement. There already exist codes and regulations and standards that are in place relative to the construction of this facility and public safety that we're going to have to adhere to. We also anticipate that there will be a very comprehensive fire review and safety assessment conducted by Prince George's County officials. We have certainly not shied away from any of those requirements, and we endeavor to participate fully in the incorporation of those design practices and standards in the construction of this facility. Relative to studies that have been done on environmental impacts and the environmental impacts relative to battery storage, I certainly would encourage anybody here to take the time to do just a Google search, and there is a wealth of information on the subject. So relative to your question, yes, there do exist studies that examine the impact of health on battery storage construction projects, and I'll point to some of those resources as we go through. But a couple of things that can't be lost in the discussion is the environmental benefits, which we'll talk about at a later slide, are certainly worth considering in the construction of battery storage systems that have demonstrated the reduction in CO2 emissions that result in the reduction of environmental impact by leveraging smaller construction footprints. And also, and we'll look at, when you look at the design, we also certainly have the opportunity where there are environmental concerns to consider hazard mitigation in the space, whether it be containment structures or other facilities as part of the design process to ensure public safety. Let me take a moment to stop there, because we do have one of our experts participating in the call, and I do want to give Mr. Bill Birch the opportunity just to make any comments relative to fire safety, and then we can go to those next two questions.
Okay.
Bill, if you're on, not sure if there was anything you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm getting used to Zoom. Sorry about that. So what I was saying on mute was, Tammy, you did a good job of explaining what's going on. I just want to drill into a couple other things that sometimes we miss in what's going on. So if anyone on the call right now is using a laptop to make this, to join this, you have a lithium ion battery setting within 3 feet of you. If you own a cell phone, you're carrying a lithium ion battery around with you. What is being done at this facility is we're taking that technology and we're expanding it to a higher rate, but it's the same basic technology as what you have. And we know from events that occurred on airplanes with cell phones and charging that you can have problems. And we have put those things in the, as Tammy referred to it, the alphabet soup that's on here with all of these letters and numbers are the standards that are in place to help protect us from those types of events. So what you have with the proposed battery energy storage is similar to having an electric vehicle, but we have put a whole series of electric vehicles in one spot. And that's what we're doing. So we have learnings from dealing with those things that are out there in the communities right now, as well as things that have happened in the past with those. So as she was stating, studies and evaluations have been done. Every time we put in a battery energy storage system, and this is not a Pepco, but this is everyone within the state of Maryland, has to have UL 9540A testing, which is testing that gives you what happens to the battery when you cause it to have a thermal runaway event. And those things are looked at and considered as part of what we're doing. Thank you.
Bill, that was UL. What was the number again? UL?
9540A. It's the standard for testing batteries for thermal runaway.
Thank you. I do recall on past meetings where our local fire department said that they would not be able to put the fire out. And I think that is a continuing major concern for the community and the location as well. But, so we have one other question. Then I'm going to go to Herb Jones. Iverna has his hand up again, but there was one statement that I wanted to bring to your attention, Tammy, that said that, I'm trying to find it, sorry, that we were originally told, this is Patricia Monroe, thank you, Patricia. We were originally told it was cheaper to put it in that location. That's one statement. And then another, Dolores asked this, and I'm going to just go to her, but I'm going to include this question. Is this required, the environmental impact study for this proposal? Thank you, Dolores. So Herb Jones, you want to come unmute?
Am I? Oh.
You're good.
I'm muted. Okay, great.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just very quickly. So other utilities that you all interact with outside of your service territory, what have you learned with respect to the safety issue? And can you give us a indication of the sort of discussion you guys had with the fire department in terms of their protocol and how they would address any safety issues related to the lithium battery fire or any other sort of hazards? What specifically are they saying with respect to this?
If I could just real quick, Herb, I have your question, and I'll certainly ask Mr. Birch to speak to that. I do want to just go back real quick to the Patricia Monroe's comment about being cheaper. For everybody on this call who's participating or paying attention, I just want to make sure that we are abundantly clear and that this is certainly the takeaway item. Cheaper is not necessarily the word we would use, but in light of the overages expected, the capacity issues expected at Livingston Substation, and in light of the existing substation, there was an opportunity to co-locate a facility at an existing location that deferred the cost of a future larger substation. And that's really the impetus. There was not a factor of what was cheaper, but rather what represented the best use of this facility and what would allow us to site the facility in a location that would not require a lot of land use. So I just want to make sure that, those were the factors that were considered. Looking at the environmental impact, what I would, and I missed the resident, so I apologize if I can't reference you by name, but thank you very much. Thank you very much. We anticipate as we go through the permitting process that there will be some environmental information studies that will have to be socialized. And, when we learn what that is, we'll certainly be ready to share that information, and that information would be publicly available. The other thing that I would highlight, again, there are plenty of studies that have been conducted. I'll actually be referring to a collection of studies at a subsequent slide, on a subsequent slide for any public review. And then to Herb's question, again, I do have another slide looking at other case scenarios. And then Bill, if you wanted to make any comments about discussions or interactions with other utilities, I'll certainly give you that opportunity here.
I don't know if I have anything specific, because I think the question was what specific. We look at the events that have occurred over the last 10 years, both inside the electric utility and outside. There's a greater number of events that occur with electric vehicles than at utility grid level installations. And a large part of that is because when you put batteries in a car, you're really abusing them driving down the road. So the likelihood of failure is much higher. But we take the fact that that is a real stress test on the batteries and the way they're configured. And we use that information that we learned from the EVs and carry it over into the grid level considerations. The standards that are in that alphabet soup have addressed many of those concerns and issues. Does that help with the?
Yes, that does. If I could just do a quick follow-up. So when I look at a project, it could be battery storage, could be a Safeway, et cetera. I always look at what could possibly be the worst case scenario, especially when you have a safety issue. So my third piece of that question was specifically your preliminary discussions with the fire department rendered what? What did they say specifically about their ability to put out any sort of issue, fire, leakage, et cetera, at this site? That's my question.
So let me refer to the slide that I'm projecting right now, which references those conversations that we've had with the fire department. So we have had introductory meetings. They have participated in our CAG meetings. Pepco and AF Mensa will provide first responder training that will be performed by a trained firefighter with knowledge of battery energy storage systems, fire hazards, and substation methods. We have specified a minimum of 16 hours of annual training for local emergency responders. Pepco and AF Mensa will provide training material for fire suppression and material handling, and both Pepco and Prince George's County Fire and EMS are committed to further engagement at the 60% design level for the battery storage system. Now let's take a deep dive into that, because I think there is a lot of misinformation that is being socialized and circulated in the community, and this represents an opportunity for us to talk about that. It is correct that at a previous CAG meeting, the Fire Chief Green stated concerns relative to being able to respond to a fire. But it is important to note that in the same meeting, Fire Chief Green also expressed her commitment and the commitment of her department to working with Pepco on the solution for just this type of specific hazard mitigation. Fire Chief Green has also indicated that the Prince George's County fire response in these situations would be assured. Her exact statement was, "We are an all hazard department." So I don't want anybody who's participating in these meetings or in these calls to have those concerns relative to the ability of your local fire department to keep you safe. There is a question that is regularly asked, and I'll just go ahead and put it out there. And Bill, if you want to if you want to jump on me for saying this, the concern has always been using water to extinguish a fire at the battery storage facility. We are capable of using water to extinguish fires at the battery storage facility. However, what we have stated in previous CAG meetings and what has been understandably difficult to communicate is that the nature of a fire and the associated response at a battery storage facility does require additional consideration, particularly around the issues of thermal runaway and then, of course, fire suppression. So I want everybody to know definitively that leveraging water and the extinguishing of a fire is certainly part of the plan for fire mitigation at the battery storage facility. And we will also be incorporating, and we'll touch on it on another slide, but there's other technology that we leverage to mitigate hazards before a fire were to occur at this site. So I'll stop there and I'll say, Bill, if you want to use this opportunity to jump in and correct or add to any of these comments, I certainly please.
So the big confusion comes when we start talking about the difference between a fire and thermal runaway. There is nothing special about a fire that occurs on the battery energy storage system. It is one of a couple things. It is either a Class A fire because it is the battery casing or insulation material for the batteries, or it is a Class B fire because the electrolyte has escaped the battery or it's off gassing and releasing hydrogen and several other hydrocarbons, and those are burning in the form of a gas. Or it's a Class C fire, which is either of the first two and is still energized electrically. In all of those cases, all of the fire departments in the country trained to deal with those. They're the basic situations that they deal with. But getting into the container and where the seat of the fire is the more difficult issue, which is why we design it with automatic suppression systems for those small fire events. And the event that becomes in discussion that gets turned into a fire, which is not a fire, is thermal runaway. Thermal runaway is a continuous exothermic reaction. And what the key difference is a fire requires oxygen. So if I can take the oxygen away, or I take the heat away, or I take the fuel away, the fire goes out. Some basic stuff. When I have thermal runaway, I can take the oxygen away and the reaction continues. And that is not a fire. That is a whole separate situation. And that's the situation that Chief Green, along with many other folks, say that's not something that they can stop under normal fire suppression means, as it is not a fire. So we have thermal runaway detection systems as required by code. We have thermal runaway protection schemes that are also required both by code and by higher standards that we have. So we merge these two situations together. As far as the fire, I have complete confidence in the Prince George's County Fire Department will solve the fire problem. The thermal runaway is what we have to do training and prepare them for, because that's the part that becomes confusing to the fire department as well as the public, because they're not used to this situation where I can have this sustained chemical reaction that's just producing the heat and allowing that to continue to go without any of our normal stuff. And we associate it with fire, but it is not a fire.
Okay. We go ahead, Herb. I'm sorry. And then we have
So if I could, and I don't want to dominate this issue,
No, go
but
ahead.
so usually in the case of a lithium battery fire, you talked about the runway, you have a fire and then you have potentially an explosion. Like I think you all made an example on the plane. You get those little, batteries in the phone, they explode. So that's more my concern. The fire suppression, I'm sure the fire department can deal with that, but when you have the explosion, that's another sort of issue. And I'm encouraged by you all's conversation with the fire department, But in summary, in terms of what I just heard from Tammy, is that the fire department is going to have to be trained by you guys. They're going to need additional training to be able to deal with the possibility of a worst case scenario. Would that be an appropriate summary?
Yes.
Yes, that would,
Okay.
that
Okay.
would be a fair assessment.
Okay, thank you.
And that's similar to, just a reminder, it's similar to in Prince George's County, in Brandywine, PSE&G operates a generation plant. The Prince George's County Fire and Emergency Services, they undergo specialty training in order to respond to fire and hazards at that location. Tucker Road Ice Rink, which recently opened up. That ice rink, it's not just water, it's actually a chemical composition that has to be stabilized. And your fire emergency rescue officials, again, they undergo specialty training for how to mitigate fires and events in the event something happens at that facility. We operate substations in District 8. We have electrical equipment and facilities that's working all the time to provide service to customers. There's standard training that the fire department undergoes at regular intervals throughout the year to learn to understand how to respond to hazards or problems in those areas. So that type of training and response and this type of preparation and mitigation, it's all part of how we work together.
Okay, so
I do want to say, I'm sorry, in the interest of time, I'm at 11:56. I can certainly stay. I have about 8 more slides to get through, but I cannot guarantee that my subject matter experts can stay.
Well,
So
I'd love to pose the questions, and I appreciate that, Tammy. We can stay as well. I want to make sure the questions that have been addressed already can get asked, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
And I'm going to collapse some of them. So Linda Black asked a great question, is the location near schools? And I'm going to combine that with another comment by Patricia Monroe, who said there are over 700 residents in South Lawn alone, not to mention 2 schools and a daycare that would have to be evacuated if there is a thermal runoff. And they wanted to know the exact address of the location. And Verna Ball asked the question, is District 8 the only district that will be at or near 1% by 2027 or even sooner? Was another district considered? So schools and then the consideration of another district.
Okay, so the best address that I'll give for the location of the existing substation, I believe it is 7117 Livingston Road in District 8. There are schools, to Patricia's comment, Oxon Hill High School's in the area, and there are schools that are in the area around the substation. Relative to the 1% question, if you could recall the image that I presented earlier, those customers in that orange circle are the customers that would be impacted by that 1% and 2% capacity differential in 2027. And again, leveraging the battery to mitigate that concern, it would be those customers served by the substation. I'll stop there, and I'll see, before I lose any of my subject matter experts, if anybody else from Pepco had any comments or wanted to offer additional information.
Can I just say one thing before they speak?
Sure.
That is why we really need to see the breakdown. These questions are key. We're saying Oxon Hill High School, but Patricia Monroe is saying daycare, 2 other schools. We need to see the capacity of how many residents and the percentage around these locations. And the only one that we keep seeing is National Harbor that's been broken down. So, I mean, we want to see all of our communities referenced in that way that we referenced National Harbor. Okay, thank you.
And thanks for the questions, Tammy. I'll just jump in really quickly. We believe that safety is our #1 priority in everything we do at Pepco, especially with this project. And just to level set, When we have a substation, it supplies the area with power. Everything that we use from being on our Zoom computers needs electricity, needs power in order to do that. And what Tammy and the team is referring to with this overload is when there's growth and development within our area where our substations reach capacity. And so we're saying that this substation, Livingston Road, will reach capacity at around 2027. Now, when we reach capacity in order to serve our customers, there are a couple things that we can do in order to be able to serve our customers, and that is build a new substation in order to deal with that capacity, which is one of the recommendations we initially had. But in order to understand the trajectory in Prince George's County, how do we maintain clean energy benefits, environmental benefits, et cetera, we proposed to the Public Service Commission, who put out a request for proposals to leverage battery storage to address systems needs. We felt that this battery storage system is a great alternative than to building a substation. If folks understand, if you drove by Livingston Road substation or any other substations are massive to build. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build. This battery storage system is a more environmental friendly, a more cost-effective way to handle any particular overloads related to this particular substation and the development that is growing within the Oxon Hill community. As it relates to fire, that substation has been operating in Livingston Road in that area for over 30 years with no issues to date. And we expect the same thing to happen if we're given approval for this battery storage facility or no. There are some inherent risks, right? We have a substation right there in the community. As Tammy said, we trained our fire departments on any inherent risks related to that substation, related to that battery. But it's no different than the poles that are going up and down your street or the gas pipes that is running under your house or running along those streets. There are inherent risks associated with utilities and supplying power, but I don't believe that this battery storage is creating any additional risk or amplifying any risk in that location where the substation already exists. So we're definitely, again, a ton of discussions, and I don't think we're going to answer them all here in the sake of time, but definitely battery storage, fire safety is the #1 concern and priority of us with this project. And we can commit to you all that we'll answer any questions related that you have to that going forward. But did just want to articulate, again, for Tammy, just the overall need while we're building a substation and how we're addressing any concerns related to community. So thanks, Tammy.
Thank you, William. Tammy, Iverna McCray has had her hand up for some time, and I just asked, do you mind, Iverna, could you pose your questions, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, I have several questions based upon what I've just heard. Based upon the chart that you have up with areas where BESS systems are located, I'm wondering how many of these locations are in majority minority areas? That's one question. My second question is, if the Livingston Road location was considered the most feasible location for this facility, then why were 4 other locations considered? And did the city council, in fact, see the reports from why the other 4 locations were rejected? And was there a community input on the rejection of those locations? Also, from the conversation from the Pepco expert, he compared the 1 lithium ion battery in our laptops to what we can expect from the facility, but the facility will have thousands of lithium batteries contained within it. So if there's a fire and we don't have adequate protection from the fire department, and those chemicals are floating around in the air, how are we going to be safe? In fact, the speak moderator as well as the expert have basically said we're not going to be safe because we don't have sufficient training from the fire department to protect us. And then if the Livingston Road location is the most feasible, Why on earth would you put it near a school, a daycare, and residents? I'm not, something is just not meshing well here with me. So if I could get some answers, that would be helpful for all of us.
Sorry, just want to make
Thank you,
sure.
Arnie.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCray. Let me go through and make sure I get as much as possible. So relative to battery storage systems in minority locations, I can't speak specifically to all of the locations in the slide, but I do want to point out Astoria Yard and City Island in New York are two examples of battery storage systems in majority minority communities. It's a little difficult to see on this slide, but on the very bottom, these were the locations that we reviewed in an earlier CAG meeting. And at the bottom of this, oh, and also the Maycroft Apartments in Washington, D.C. Something that you want to look for when you're looking at studies about majority minority, if that's concerned, it's a terrible way statisticians and numbers experts use. But I would recommend that you also look at low to moderate income as well, and the location for these facilities. So relative to minorities, just off the top of my head, I would point to Astoria Yard and City Island. On the bottom of this slide is a link to the Edison Electric Institute. And this is a report that was done in 2021, looking at 30 additional battery storage case studies in areas all throughout America on different by different utility providers, and we had also offered that as a reference for the public. So it's just important to note that certainly your concern in that area is valid. There is a case for facilities being located in areas, but also areas like Sterling, Massachusetts, or DeSoto County, Florida, or Browns Valley, California. These facilities, the location of these facilities is primarily driven by grid needs and less driven by, putting it in places where it's ineffective or areas based on income or race. So that's the first thing I'll point out. The other locations that were proposed were shared with the Public Service Commission, and the rationales for why they were not selected were shared with the Public Service Commission. I do believe the Public Service Commission did hold public comment periods throughout the battery storage process. Prince George's County actually did offer comments on the battery storage project. Certainly, and I believe the council member did provide a link to those proceedings at the Public Service Commission level at the last TNI meeting, but that information is publicly available in terms of comment from other constituencies. I also captured a question regarding lithium battery. I believe our expert was simply trying to state that the prevalence of lithium ion batteries across all of the technology that we're using today is increasing, whether it be in our computers, cell phones, and any number of small electronics, or even in stores that we shop in and restaurants that we patronize. The use of this battery is ever increasing, and it's really important to point out a market difference between what's being proposed at Livingston Road versus other lithium ion batteries, and that's what's being proposed at Livingston is a stationary battery. And in terms of the ability for the battery to function safely, the fact that it's stationary is a big consideration. The fact that it's enclosed is also of significant consideration relative to safety. This battery is not operating in a free cycling type of scenario that would make it more vulnerable to failure or other issues. And then lastly, we have been made aware, and it has been a part of the conversation from the beginning about the location of the residential communities, the schools, the daycares in the area. And I just want to take this opportunity to point out that the location of the battery storage facility was driven by an existing substation. So it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. The substation was there, the substation had the land, the substation had the capacity challenges, and the technology that the battery storage system provides us gives us the ability to mitigate this issue at this substation, which services the school, services those residential areas, which services those daycares. I've spent a lot of time in the community, and I see a lot of customers that are leveraging solar panels on the roofs of their homes. I see businesses that are taking advantage of third-party suppliers for the provision of energy renewables like solar and wind in the ability for in their capacity to provide service. And the way we effectively integrate those renewables, the way we can support communities and businesses that are making those investments is we have to start learning how to leverage this technology. And that's why Livingston Substation represented the best case. We're going to endeavor to build a battery that is safe, that is reliable. You've heard commitments from both Pepco as well as your own public safety officials that we're going to follow every regulation to the letter in terms of ensuring that this facility does not fail. And we remain committed to that fact. It's my sincere hope that nobody leaves this conversation with any concern on the ability of Prince George's County to provide services. And we will continue to remain committed to transparency in this process and hopefully get to a point where we can offer assurances that make you feel more comfortable. It's 12:11. I don't know if I have any of my subject matter experts. I do have about 6 more slides to go through. I can just fly through those real quick. Just a couple slides looking at environmental considerations, which we've discussed here a little bit today. A couple things that I just want to highlight. We're aware of the considerations for the environment, but we do want to highlight the fact that utility batteries have the ability to reduce climate change and air pollution while increasing the use of renewable energy and by improving grid flexibility. That's a very important point that I did want to highlight on this slide. This is a technology that stands to have a lot of benefits relative to the concerns about environmental sustainability and the delivery of electric energy. We expect that the Livingston Road battery storage system reduces the environmental impact by leveraging construction of a smaller facility at an existing substation property. The proposed site does take into consideration proximity to residential homes and businesses. I want to thank so many people who participated in the CAG process, who participated in the site walkthrough. We've chosen a location at the Livingston substation that locates this battery as far away as possible from their residential community and in a closer proximity to our assets at the substation, as well as locating those facilities closer to the main road to enhance public safety access and efficiency. Participation in this pilot is going to have an impact on the future of battery storage projects in the state as well as the county. As it's been indicated at various iterations in this presentation, battery storage represents the best possible future for renewables in this space. And we're very excited about the opportunity this pilot gives us to reconsider construction of facilities moving forward. And finally, Pepco and AF Mensa, we do have awareness around those environmental concerns. The council member's office has shared concerns around contamination and of course, the concerns about air quality. We're going to continue to design the facility to incorporate those national standards and best practices to alleviate those concerns and to manage those mitigation strategies. And all that's done in an effort to keep the public safe. And we will continue to keep the public aware of what we're leveraging in the realm of environmental management and public safety. Let me just get through customer rates and then we can open it up for questions or comments. Earlier, we had the discussion about customer rates. As presented to the Public Service Commission, and currently this project reduces customer bills below what they otherwise would have been during the pilot period. During the pilot period, the battery storage system is expected to reduce customer bills 1% each month for residential customers, large commercial customers reducing their bills by $18.80 a month during the pilot period. Now, that's not because we like commercial businesses better than residential. It's really based on usage, and commercial customers just use more energy than residential customers. The quantified benefits, the biggest benefit that we see associated with the construction of this facility is that it defers the cost of a larger, the construction of a larger substation. I understand there's the concern about the cost for the battery, but I would ask that the community consider any associated cost for a battery storage system relative to the cost of a larger substation. And it really is a night and day difference. And the opportunity that the battery gives us to continue to defer those costs, we think has the maximum benefit for ratepayers. And also there are a number of unquantified benefits, pilot learnings, again, that can influence future construction and development. Also the opportunity for minority vendor participation. Today it's AF Mensa, tomorrow, whether it be the construction of the IT facilities, long-term management of battery storage, or construction of additional battery storage facilities, it opens up the opportunity for that expanded minority vendor participation, as well as economic development opportunities within Prince George's County. And we've committed to the Public Service Commission that we'll continue to prioritize local vendors as often as we can with this project. And then overall improved grid operations. A resilient grid speaks volumes for economic development, whether it be the construction of additional businesses, whether it be the opportunity for businesses to grow. Being able to provide safe and reliable electric service is critical to grid operations, and it just reverberates in the larger community for commercial and residential customers. I'll stop there and I'll ask if there are any questions.
And before,
Yes.
okay, I'm sorry. Before a question, I might have missed this, but I know Iverna, she asked a number of questions, but she asked that one slide, if you could go back to that slide with all of the substations, she asked how many of those were in minority areas. Did we get that answered? I don't recall.
I believe my answer was that I couldn't speak to how many were in minority areas, but I did highlight that Astoria Yard and City Island are in low to moderate income areas, which also, again, statisticians and the way we use numbers would suggest higher rates of minority home ownership, minority residential ownership.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you, Tammy.
And Tammy, just to piggyback related to minority and environmental justice concerns, we know that climate change is real. Prince George's County is embarking on an entire climate action plan under the authority of the Prince George's Council to review by the Climate Action Commission. And within that draft plan that has been circulating, that battery storage and solar technology has to be adopted in increased rates in order to combat climate change. So we know firsthand, being in District 8, the amount of flooding that has impacted our homes and a number of different environmental impacts to climate change that impact Black, brown, and minority communities at higher rates than whites. And so with battery storage, what it is able to do, and I think that Tammy articulated very well, is that battery storage has the opportunity to increase the effectiveness of clean energy within our communities. It has the ability to increase the proliferation of solar to ensure that clean energy is what we're using day to day so that we can reverse the impacts of climate change. And so when we think about how the grid operates, and when we all come home from work at 5 p.m. and we turn on our air conditioners or our heats, that's when we use the most energy. And that's when they're using dirty energy resources such as coal, such as natural gas. And so what this battery will be able to do is we'll be able to leverage renewable energy to charge this battery. And then when we need it at times of the most, during peak times, we can use clean energy to supply our homes and families. And that is going to ultimately reduce the greenhouse emissions within the county. And so that's one of the reasons why battery storage is seen as a great environmental benefit, and especially ones that minority communities should take and benefit wholeheartedly from as we move into the future.
And hi, Hi, this is Donna Cooper, Pepco Region President. How is everyone?
Good,
I
Donna.
Great. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so very much, Council Member, for your leadership in partnering with us to convene this meeting on today. I just wanted to note that I have listened to all of the comments, the questions, some largely that have been raised from the very beginning with the project by your council member. And then I did note the request for some additional data and information from community members. So we will work to get that information to the council member and to disseminate it to the communities. And just wanting to underscore the safety variables that you have identified, which is definitely understandable, and that is a priority for us. I did hear a lot of the questions around the equity pieces, and more so in reference to contracting opportunities, but also I do know you're questioning whether or not certain communities are being identified for this type of project versus others. So we'll get some information back to you regarding that. I did note the questions specific to the proximity to homes, schools, the daycare as well, and concerns there in the fire safety piece. So please know that we are listening. We do hear your concerns. We will be taking that back internally as well, just concerning the underlying concerns that you have consistently articulated about the project. So thank you for the opportunity to engage, and we are committed to following up. We will talk more internally regarding the concerns that have been highlighted again through this meeting, and then we will follow back up. So thank you again.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate that response. And I didn't catch, who was your title? I apologize.
Pepco Region President.
Okay. I'm sorry. I should know you. Well, thank you for
Thank you
for attending the meeting. I didn't see your name, and I was searching for it, so I see you were calling in from the phone. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate, again, the collaboration we've had with Pepco. Tammy has been doing an awesome job and has been consistent in showing up and providing the information that we requested. So we're looking forward to the information that we are asking for, especially for all of our constituents in the whole district. So thank you for that. I think Herb Jones. Okay. I think Herb Jones had a question.
Yes, I do. And I'd like to say good morning to Pepco Regional President Donna Cooper. It's good to hear your voice. Just a quick question, Tammy. The company does future load projections, and I understand the concept of deferring the building of a substation, but we know ultimately we will have to build a substation. I think that's fair to assess, right? Ultimately, we're going to have to build that substation.
Sorry, Mr. Jones. I would not say we ultimately will have to build those substations.
Okay.
What we have seen is through energy efficiency, through solar and other technology, customer load has stayed flat, or in some cases decreasing, that has removed some of the need to build the substation. Now, we can't speak to the development in the area. We just seen a story not too long ago that at the National Harbor facility, they want to make a corporate headquarters down there. So if the load in the area increases to the point beyond what this battery storage or energy efficiency or solar is able to do for the community, then we may have to look for other means to address that load. But also, if this battery storage pilot goes well, battery storage and other technology could also be a means that can further defer this substation out a number of years, a decade or more. So it's not necessarily a predetermined thing that this substation must be built. We heard loud and clear from the community, and we're going to look for every opportunity to reduce the need for that substation and the environmental impact on the community.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Ellis. My thought was, as the county moves forward and attempts to build out more commercial establishments, I'm sure you all are in discussions with their economic development cluster, and county officials about the low projection of Pepco in the future. You all do that for all your jurisdictions, I'm sure. And you have a sense of what that low projection is going to be 10, 15 years out. You already have that. Because if you don't, that would be a problem. In terms of I want to go back to my initial question. In terms of the risk, you've heard folks concerned about the fire and the explosion, lithium batteries. The technology is relatively new. There has been some fires in other areas, not the Pepco service territory, but throughout with lithium batteries, and there's some concern about that. So when I think about shared risk, and I think about the 15-year pilot program, I think about the appropriate shared financial risk, because right now, if I understand how it's being treated as a pilot program, you're going to put those costs back into rates and spread it over all your rate base. When it's a pilot program, from my perspective, it should be a shared financial risk, Pepco and the shareholders. You talked about 1%. I think the projection is a 1% reduction in rates, over a couple of over a year, I believe, once the battery storage gets going. But those are projections. I just believe on the front end, it should be a shared financial risk because it is a pilot program over a 15-year period. That's just my position.
Thank you very
much. Mr. Jones, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Donna.
So Mr. Jones, great hearing your voice as well. So just wanting to share, we can have a deeper dive around the rate structure. So one of the things that I know that you're very familiar with is that the asset would have to go into use. And as you indicated, you're terming it as, a pilot. So are we going to see actual and real outcomes if this is actually cited in this area? Is it going to produce the benefits? So during the process, because the commission is going to have to look at this over a longer horizon. And so whatever particular cost that may be associated with this, they're going to have to look at also, and others may correct me in terms of prudency as well as outcomes. If this is a project that's implemented that's not yielding the type of results that you are projecting should be you would be asking that we don't recover, I'm assuming, likely in that process around that. So there is a structure that will be in place, as you know, whereby the commission would be vetting and reviewing this particular project outcomes as well as recovery on the investment that is made. So Pepco will be making that initial investment. We would actually be coming in trying to recover and to justify that particular recovery. And those things would come into the equation at that time.
Thank you.
We're at 12:27, and I have just a couple more slides that I will fly through, and then we will conclude. We just want to talk about community benefits of BEST and the community advisory group process. Not going to speak to every point on this slide, but typically we get the question from residents and our customers to talk about the community benefits. You've heard some of it today relative to leveraging renewables on the grid and grid flexibility, as well as support for the substation. Just a couple of things that I do want to highlight. Battery storage can save operational costs, and when we have those operational cost savings, that translates into savings for our customers. Also, the reduction of costs by offsetting the need for additional capital investments, such as a substation. And again, just also want to touch on the incorporation of renewables into the grid flexibility and modernization. Leveraging batteries in this space really represents future best practices in the delivery of safe and reliable electric service. Just talking about the CAG process. The CAG has been in effect since February, and we have already seen a tremendous benefit from our relationship with community members, stakeholders who are here today, stakeholders who've worked with us in the past. We're committed to our ongoing CAG meetings. Certainly, before we move for any permitting process, we are going to engage in community notifications, enhanced outreach materials, and understanding that the weather in the upcoming months may present some challenges. We certainly would appreciate the opportunity to be open to any future on-site meetings at the Livingston substation to really give community members an opportunity to see the site In terms of community site design, as you mentioned on slide number 1, we've been able to leverage our interaction with the council member's office and the community advisory groups to inform design currently. As we move forward with renderings, we're certainly looking forward to bringing the community into that process to have the discussion about things such as fencing, vegetation at the site for screening, and then additional community signage or community amenities that we think could benefit the community as we go through the process of constructing this facility. And speaking to educational programming for the community as well, there's an opportunity for battery storage learnings that will be shared with the commission, as well as engagement with other local stakeholders. I'm very happy to share with this group that we've done initial outreach to the University of Maryland and their fire protection safety unit, as well as their training, fire training unit, and they have expressed interest in learning more about the battery and working with us in terms of best management practice and battery storage learnings. We look forward to the opportunity, as we stated publicly, to work with the council member's office and the community for support for things like the local drone academy, which we know is very popular and very successful. We actually leverage drones in our work, and we would appreciate the opportunity to engage the community in discussions around our work in that space, as well as public safety demonstrations. Safety is our #1 motivating factor in the delivery of reliable electric service to customers, and obviously any opportunity to have that discussion within the public is very important to us. And again, once the battery system is complete, we welcome the opportunity for future site tours for stakeholders, and we will be very happy to engage in any opportunity to share the construction and design of this facility with the public. Moving on to questions and discussions, our next CAG meeting is planned for November 19th. We certainly look forward to continuing this discussion, and I will end here for any final questions or comments for this meeting today.
Let me see if there's any additional things in the chat. Doesn't look like it. I just want to, first of all, before anyone might be posing a question, thank you, Tammy, for your patience, and it was your idea to stop after every slide for questions, which I think actually works best because it's a lot of information to take in and for everybody to kind of digest each slide and to ask questions as we go along. Thank you so much for your patience in dealing with all the questions that came at you at one time, so we appreciate that. So are there any other questions? Herb, your hand is still raised, but I don't know if that's from the last one. I'm just looking through to see if I see any other raised hands. I don't see anything else in the chat. I want to thank Ms. Cooper again. Donna Cooper, thank you for coming on and giving your, talking to our constituents directly. The councilwoman is very appreciative of Pepco's involvement with us. Will, great to see you again. And all the Pepco team, we appreciate everybody being on board. And of course, we appreciate our District Great constituents for taking your time out today to join us. I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on November 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Be safe.
Bless everyone and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.